everyone, so I'm Kerry and I'm a student in year 13. And so today I'm going to be talking about self-reflection and how that's kind of helped me overcome a lot of obstacles that were meaningful to me in my life. Okay, whatever, I'm just going to go right into it. So I'm first going to tell you a story about something that happened to me a few years ago. Should I like stop? Sorry.
Your microphone.
Don't continue for another minute.
Microphone.
Yeah, I want to stop the construction first. You need to buy the construction PLC.
That's smart. You should tell them. So should I start again? Should I start again? Okay. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Kerry, I'm a student in year 13, and today I'm going to be talking about self-reflection and how it's kind of helped me overcome a lot of obstacles that were meaningful to me and my life. So I'm going to start off telling you a story about something that happened to me a few years ago. And so kind of after that, I'm going to tell you about how this kind of inspired me to do more self-reflection and how that's helped me apply it to a lot of different aspects of my life. So this is, I'm just going to go straight into this story. So it's about how one day I came home from school and it was after a really, really tiring day. You know, I'd stayed up really late the night before working on an assessment, and so I was ready to come home and take a very long nap. And so I got to my door and I looked inside my bag and I discovered that I left my home key at home. And so I was just standing outside my door and I was really, really disappointed in myself. So I sat down and I texted my mom and I just spent like the next 2 hours waiting for someone to get home. And so in this time, I had a lot of time to kind of reflect on, the things that like made me not remember my key because I was sitting outside and I had nothing to do. And so because of that, right, I spent this time kind of thinking about reasons why I forgot it. And at this point, I like hated myself for not working on my assessment earlier. I hated my teacher for setting this deadline. I hated, schools for having assessment. I hated all academic institutions for existing. But after that, after this reflection process, I realized that I forgot my key because I'd overslept the night before, I was running a little bit late. But since that day, I have never forgotten my key again. I never forgot it because I had reflected on whether I could have changed anything, about the reasons that happened behind, the reasons why I forgot it. And so I thought about how forgetting my key could kind of help me and be more valuable in the future. And this is something that I feel like a lot of us need to do more because in Hong Kong, we're constantly really busy, we're constantly moving through our day a lot, especially with the amount of schoolwork we have to do. And so it's really important, I think, for me especially, to take the time out of my day, maybe like on the commute back home, at the gym, in the shower, to just think about something that we normally wouldn't have thought twice about. Because in that process, we're able to kind of think about different things and really reflect on it and help maximize our experiences and improve our lives. And so my experience with forgetting the key was valuable because I was able to take that and ensure that the next time I remember to bring my key. Every time I pass the counter, I'm like, remember that time I sat outside my house for 2 hours? And so that way, by waiting outside, I was able to think about it. And we don't all need to suffer those same consequences, but we can kind of take our different experiences and reflect on it. And so the thing about life, we've all heard the saying, we learn new things every day. And so the reason why a lot of us don't remember the new things that we've learned, the reason why some of us look back on our days and are like, that was a pretty useless day, is because we don't really take the time to reflect on those experiences. And so kind of by taking that information that we have, information that we stumble upon, that's the way that we can, really improve our lives. And so, for example, I recently read something online about how a hippo sweat is red. I know. So, I spent the entire day really thinking about this red sweat and imagining blue sweat and green sweat. And so I went home and I searched it up online. And I found out that this red sweat isn't actually sweat. It's a fluid that hippos secrete that acts as a sunscreen, a moisturizer, and a water repellent, which is really cool. So I went home, I was at home already, and I told my parents at the dinner table. I came back to school the next day, and I told my friends about it, which was a really interesting conversation starter. And I'm telling you about that now because it's something that I remember, because it's something I reflected on. And so it's okay, if today after this talk the only thing you remember is blood, sweat, but I'd be very pleased because you're taking the time now to reflect on this piece of knowledge and to really think about it. And so if you go home today and if you do research on anything else from these talks, anything from my talk, and if you kind of think about it and think about how it can be applied to your own life, then you're doing further reflection and you're further maximizing your experience. On the other hand, if you're just sitting here today and you don't really think about what's going on in these TED Talks, you go home, you might forget about them in the next few weeks, and you would have wasted an entire afternoon here when you could have been doing something else that was more productive. So it's kind of really important because through self-reflection, we're able to maximize every single one of the experiences we have, no matter how useless they may seem, and that's how we can kind of take advantage of them and really use them to our benefit. And so, because self-reflection helps us maximize the usefulness of our experiences, it helps us know more and improve for the future, and it can just really help us improve our lives, right? But it also does more than that. It helps us get to know more about ourselves, it helps us be more self-aware, and it makes us better people in the long run. And so if you want to know more about self-reflection, you can go home and do some research because I'm really not an expert. Today, I'm going to be talking more about my experiences with self-reflection and how it's helped me with my own life. So something that I've always personally struggled with is image and self-esteem. So I never wore my hair down outside of my house until I was 14 because I really didn't like my hair. I constantly criticized how I looked. I was always really worried about what other people thought of me. I was really conscious, of whether they were saying bad things about me, and I never really wanted to raise attention to myself. And so I would always kind of try to sweep my problems underneath the carpet. I would put on a happy face, and I never really tried to face them, and I kind of just hoped that they would go away. And so the thing about growing up in Hong Kong, with Asian parents, Eastern culture kind of really focuses on saving face for yourself, for your family, being the best person that you can possibly be, so that other people are like, wow, that family is so good, that daughter is such a good daughter. And so often because of this, I felt like I was constantly under the pressure to be the best person I had to be for my family. And to me, this was, this really happy, confident, successful person. And so I was always so worried about trying to pretend to be this happy, confident person, in front of other families, in front of other parents, and I forgot to actually try to be that kind of person. And so something that I've experienced really recently is this past May, I was chosen to be head girl of CIS, right? And I was very, very scared. I mean, it's such an honor, but it was such a frightening opportunity. And I couldn't help but feel like I was under the pressure to be the best representative possible for CIS. And so what I struggled most with was feeling like I was good enough to hold this position. I didn't feel like I was as smart or as wise or as intellectual as Sophie or Jimin, the previous head girls, whom I really admire. And so I was really anxious about filling their shoes. And so over the summer, I watched Legally Blonde 2. For those unfamiliar with the movie, it follows Elle Woods, this really upbeat blonde who goes to Harvard Law School and becomes a really successful lawyer in the first movie. And in the second movie, she goes to Washington, D.C. to pass a law. And so in this time, nobody there takes Elle very seriously because she's not the stereotypical lawyer. She wears pink suits, she loves hair salons, she loves gossip magazines. And so even though this was something that was different, she didn't try to do things with other people's methods, even though people were like, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. She did what works for her, and that's why she ends up succeeding. She did things the Elle Woods way. And so instead of trying to fit in, that's what she did. She used her advantages, she used her strengths to her advantage. And so because of my low self-esteem, I was constantly comparing myself to other people. I was constantly, criticizing myself and comparing the things that other people had, and I didn't. But watching this movie reminded me that every single person is different, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And so through self-reflection, I asked myself questions about, what I'm proud of, what I'm grateful for, what my own strengths and weaknesses are. And through this process, I gained this better emotional self-awareness, and I was kind of getting better at recognizing who I am and achieve kind of what I want to achieve and be who I want to be. And so having that self-awareness is so important for the way we view the world and the way we accomplish things, because it affects people around us as well. And when we don't think we're good enough, then we kind of express that negativity to other people, and it affects the way that other people treat us. And so, for example, when we lack self-esteem, if someone is better, then we're thinking, why can't I be better? Why am I so bad? Instead of, feeling good about other people's successes. You know, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people and we're criticizing ourselves. And so in that sense, we're feeling bad about what other people are good at, and we're not celebrating their talents with them, and instead we're just, you know, sitting in a corner sulking. And so going back to this idea of self-reflection, we need to choose, you know, a different view of the world and try to shift our perspective, because our world is a reflection of ourselves. When we see the world as a place where we're inferior or not good enough, then we are inferior and not good enough. When we don't believe in ourselves and we think we're bad at something, then, you know, we treat our successes as flukes, and we treat our failures as proof that we were right, instead of, you know, treating them as motivation to improve. And, you know, I see this all the time, you know, at school. You know, if we think we're bad at math, if we get a bad grade in our math class, then we're like, I knew it, like, I'm bad at math. But then if we do well, then we're like, oh, it's just a fluke, like, I'm just gonna do badly again next time. And so I think that this is something that a lot of us need to try and, you know, shift our perspective, because that way we can start to see our successes as things worth celebrating and our failures instead as motivation to improve. So I've been doing gymnastics since I was 4 years old, and I stopped when I was 11 because I broke my arm, and then I started again 4 years later when I was 15. And so before I broke my arm, I was never really scared of doing any skills, you know, they just came really easily to me. But after going back, having experienced how dangerous the sport was and like being older, I was a lot more afraid. And I was also, you know, taller and heavier, so the skills felt very different and unfamiliar. But I slowly started getting my skills back, and I started gaining my confidence back. But in all those years before and after I quit gymnastics, well, before and after I broke my arm, the beam was always, you know, something that I was really, really scared of, because it's like this 4-inch wide piece of wood that I'm supposed to do flips on. That's really scary. And so, you know, after reflecting, I realized that that's what gymnastics is about. You know, that's what I love about it. It's like, you know, taking risks, doing cool things, and like going out of my comfort zone. But, you know, every time I went on the beam, I still had to face this fear. And every time, you know, regardless of how I shifted my perspective, I was still really afraid. And so I realized that while strength and ability are really important, your mental awareness and kind of like being aware of like your own emotions is really important in gymnastics, because how you feel can affect the rest of your routine. And so because I was scared, every time I went on the beam, I was so careful, and I like would do my skills very like tentatively, you know, I jump, I'd be like, so, you know, I felt, but even though I like did them really tentatively, you know, I still always fell. And I still got low scores, and I didn't do well in competitions because I was afraid to practice, I was afraid to go out of my comfort zone, and maybe like I was afraid to fall. And so I associated the beam with falling, and so every time I fell, this was proof that I was bad, this was proof that I couldn't practice more and improve because I was scared I'd fall again. But it wasn't my abilities that were the problem. You know, if I did them on the floor, I'd land them in a straight line, I could do them easily. It was this mental barrier. And so I kind of tried to approach my beam skills with more determination to get over this fear, and I tried to shift my perspective again. And so instead of thinking about how easily I could fall, I thought about how easily I could stay on. And once I shifted my perspective, and once I started trying to kind of gain more confidence, then my skills were performed better. And I landed my skills, you know, with a bang instead of what I did just now. And so once I gave each skill my everything, then instead of trying to do them like and cushioning my landing, I started to improve. But this also came with a trade-off, right? Because my better skills came with a price. When I did fall, which I did over and over again, I fell harder and faster. And so I learned that I didn't always succeed just because I shifted my perspective, because things wouldn't have changed just like that. But giving it my everything and really kind of trying to do everything in the best way I possibly could made my successes worth celebrating. And when I fell, you know, I learned that I just needed to reconstruct my confidence and try again and give it my best again. Now, it would have been so easy to say I'm bad at the beam and just accept that and move on. But instead, by changing my approach, I became more confident and I became better. And so this is a kind of choice that we make. I chose to shift my perspective, and I chose to see the beam as something that I could succeed at instead of something I would fall off of. We choose to climb a mountain and, you know, complain about the tiring hike up there, or we can choose to get to the top and really take in the view and appreciate it. And so today, I know I'm not the wisest, I know I'm not the most intellectual, and I know that I'll still fail sometimes, and other people will be better than me. But I feel like it was really important for me to understand that what people see about me and what people don't say about me are still part of who I am. And so Even though I know that other people will still be better, that's okay. And I'm getting better at shifting my perspective and recognizing my strengths and using them to my advantage instead of trying to do something someone else's way. And so knowing my weaknesses can help me strive to improve, but I can do so and simultaneously be happy with who I am already. So thanks for listening today, and I hope that through self-reflection, you were able to get something from my talk today.